I was living in Saskatoon, and I had just moved there because I'd gotten a job at a radio station, my first job in radio. And I didn't know anybody, and I wasn't making much money because radio pays, not very well. And this was 1997, so there was very little jiu-jitsu in Canada, and I had learned a little bit here and there, but anyway, when I got to Saskatoon, I visited some of the local clubs, and the one that was most to my liking was there was a club at the local YMCA, and there was a fellow there teaching judo who'd been to the Olympics a couple times, and it was super. It was like $30 or $40 a month, so I could afford it, and it was high quality judo. And anyway, when I started training there, my judo per se was not good, but my groundwork was okay because I'd been training for years since the first UFC, like '93. I'd been training groundwork, with my friends, and so my groundwork, or as they call it, my newaza, was pretty good, and I was able to submit a lot of the guys that I trained with, which was not to their liking because I was wearing a judo white belt because I was a white belt in judo, and my judo wasn't very good. All I had was basically a double leg, which was legal at the time in judo. It's now illegal, but my judo consisted of basically a double leg and then, some. I don't want to say I was a blue belt, but I was, I was for a white belt. I was pretty good back in the day, right? Because I've been training at that point for 4 or 5 years, on the ground. Anyway, like I said, I didn't know anybody there, and I wasn't making much money. And it was Saskatoon, and it was the winter, so it was, super cold outside with snowdrifts, as big as hills and whatnot. And I was living in this apartment that was, it was dirt cheap, but it was it was gross. There was this thick orange carpet that smelled like Chinese food, and you could hear the neighbors yelling at each other, in some other language. And anyway, so anyway, I was doing judo a couple times a week, and the fact that I had pretty decent, groundwork, newaza, but I was wearing a white belt. Because of that, a lot of people didn't like me, and I think they called me Jiu-Jitsu Jeff, even though the groundwork that I'd learned it mostly at a Hapkido club, so I thought I'd been doing Hapkido, but whatever. They called me Jiu-Jitsu Jeff, and they didn't, and bear in mind, judo guys, a lot of them, do not like Jiu-Jitsu. They think of it as a sort of a scam or someone trying to steal their glory or whatever. So, so there was a few reasons that people didn't like me there, But that being said, I also met a few people that I got along really well with, And there was this one guy, I don't even recall, I think I met him he came for a judo class, and we just hit it off. He's huge dude, looks just like Tank Abbott, really funny, good sense of humor, very sarcastic, and he considered himself more of a Sambo practitioner, like the Russian, Sambo. Even though I don't think he'd ever done a Sambo class, but he was really interested in leg locks and wearing what they call, I guess, a kurtka, the Sambo jacket with the shoulder. I think the belt goes through these little loops or whatever. Anyway, so I was kind of a jiu-jitsu guy, even though I thought I'd learned Hapkido. He was more of a Sambo guy. We met at a judo club. We got along, and anyway, one day I'm laying on the, shag orange carpeting of my gross, empty apartment. And it's like I said, the winter in Saskatoon, it's cold outside. And my friend, this Tank Abbott lookalike, he calls me up and says, "Hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything because, I got no money. I got no friends aside from, him, and I got nothing to do. I don't know anybody, right? And he goes, well, tonight's there's this birthday party happening for this like local judo guy, and you want to come? And I said, sure. And he's like, he's crazy, but he's got really good newaza. And I thought, well, I mean, I'm interested in doing groundwork. I mean, I'm interested in learning all of grappling, but I was particularly interested in, groundwork, newaza, grappling because of the UFC and jiu-jitsu and whatnot. So I thought maybe he's got something to show, right? So anyway, my friend, he comes and picks me up, and I should mention the car he was driving. I am pretty sure he had gotten it for free, and he had just sort of found it in a cornfield, and like the farmers were just like, yeah, here's the keys, take it away. And this car was like this huge old piece of crap that he said when he started it, mice came running out of the tailpipe. and I saw it when he started it, like a little lightning bolt would come out of the ignition and like zap him on the thumb, and and when he drove it, sometimes the horn of this thing would go off, as you're driving along in the prairie winter, and the snow. And bear in mind, it was a super loud horn, and so you know how when it snows, everything's quieter because the snow dampens the sound everywhere. So this horn, man, when it went off. And it went off most of the time we were driving. You're driving along, Anyway, still, it's better than having to walk around. And when I was living in Saskatoon years ago, I had to walk everywhere because I couldn't afford a car and, So anyway, so he picks me up in this giant, mouse lightning horn car. And we drive over to this club. It wasn't a judo club. It was just some martial arts club, and the guy there taught judo there, I guess, a couple times a week. I don't know. And we go inside, and and it's a birthday party. This guy's turning 60. He's kind of a local, I don't want to say celebrity, but his students, his friends, his family are there. Some people are wearing kimonos or gis or whatever, and some people aren't. There's sake, there's cake, there's sushi, And the guy whose birthday it is, he's walking around and he's talking to people and he's drinking sake. He's a little bit drunk. He's having cake and sushi, whatever. It's a good time, right? And my friend, he knows some people and, he goes off to socialize and whatnot. And I don't know anybody aside from my friend that's just walked away, right? So I just go sit at the back. I kind of shy, to new people. I don't know these people and stuff. And I'm just sitting in the back, waiting, I guess, for class to start, because I'm here on the idea that we're going to learn some judo, some groundwork, some newaza. And as I'm sitting there, this other fellow comes over and says hi to me and introduces himself, and I'm pretty sure he said his name was Jared. And we get to talking, because, I'm a social enough guy, and he's like, I don't know anybody here, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know anybody either. And I don't know how he found his way to the party, but, there he was, there I was, And so we start talking. And it turns out he had just been down in California training with the Gracies, which to me was like, what? And so, he's wearing his, judo, jiu-jitsu kimono. I'm wearing mine. Back in the day, it was the same thing. There was no difference between a judo gi and a jiu-jitsu kimono. You just wore what you wore. Anyway, and then we start showing each other what we know. He's showing me the stuff he learned in California. I'm showing him the stuff I've learned through mostly VHS tapes, and maybe some books here and there, and we're getting along. I'm showing him some stuff. Oh, look at this, look at that, kind of cool, I've made a new friend, right? We're showing each other arm locks, chokes, and this attracts the attention of the fellow whose birthday it is, right? And he comes over and he sees us, doing chokes and stuff. And he says to us, listen, when you're doing chokes, you don't have to squeeze really hard because the blood is right under the skin. And me and this fellow Jared were smiling. Okay, great, thank you. Because it's his birthday and he's 60 and, whatever. We're just entertaining him. He's a little bit drunk and stuff, or maybe quite a bit. And he had with him the judo fellow whose birthday it was. He had him with him a little gym bag, a little, sports bag. And he reached into it, and he's telling us, oh, the blood is right under the skin. And as he says that, he reaches into his gym bag, and the dude pulls out a knife. Like, I don't want to say it's a switchblade, but it's got like a little button on it, and like the little blade pops out, And it's not like it's not a machete. It's just like a little, Anyway, he pulls this out and he runs it down Jared's chest. Like, not me, but the guy beside me. He just runs it down Jared's chest. And he doesn't, does he cut him? Kind of. It's kind of like a bad scratch. Like, Jared's intestines aren't spilling out, but he's bleeding. Like, the blood is not pouring out, but, it's like when you cut yourself shaving and, like, the blood, wells to the surface. It's a bad scratch, And then the judo guy throws the knife back in the bag and jumps on Jared to, like, choke him or grapple with him or whatever, And Jared and I were like, what the hell? And the judo guy's like, ha, ha, ha. Let's do this crazy laugh and jumps on him, And Jared, I guess we were all in our 20s, or whatever. And Jared is able to kind of break free of this guy's, attempt to grapple him. And then at this point, the guy who popped the knife, he just goes back to socializing with people. He's just walking around the club as if nothing crazy has just happened. To him, this is not a thing. And Jared and I were both like, what the hell? And Jared's like, dude, I'm going to go. And he's like, I'm going to go put some polysporin on this or something. You know what I mean? This could be, who knows what he was doing with that knife? Maybe he was, So anyway, so he leaves, and rightfully so, right? Because, knife attack, right? And I go over to my friend, the bigger fellow that looks like Tank Abbott, and I'm like, dude, this birthday boy just popped a knife on a guy and put it down his chest, and let's get the hell out of here. This is nuts, And then my friend, he says, he does that to everybody. And then I look around, and sure as shit, not everybody, but a lot of people there, because when you're wearing your judo kimono and, this part's exposed, a lot of people have these, like, faint lines on them. They've all had the knife run down their chest. And I say to my friend, this is bonkers, man. Let's roll. Let's get out of here. He's like, he does that to everybody. I'm staying. So now I have a choice. I can stay, or I can, like, walk home in, like, Saskatchewan, and it's like December or whatever, and there's, like I said, it's like minus 40 outside, big piles of snow, it's not. So I think, what? I'll just bide my time. This is crazy, but I'm just going to go back to where I was and just, wait till, for this to roll to a halt. So I go back and sit in the corner, thinking this is crazy. And then the class starts, right? And the guy who's, it's his 60th birthday, he's drunk, apparently he pulls knives on people frequently, We do a bit of a warm-up, and then the guy wants to show some technique, and you'll never guess who he wants to use as his, like, uke or demonstration partner, right? Me. You would think he'd want to use one of his own students or whatever, but no, he picks me, you in the corner, come here. And so I am, like, trying to be social, but at the same time, I am not interested in, like, having this guy do any technique on me, because I don't trust him. He just pulled a knife on a guy. And so I try to politely say to him, hey, thank you, but, happy birthday, but no thank you. I'm just, and he just won't take no for an answer, and he says to me, I'm doing this technique on you. And I'm like, sir, no thank you, sensei or whatever. No means no. And then the dude says, I am going to, I think he wanted to show an arm lock, and he grabs me. He grabs onto me. And, what are you supposed to do at that point? A drunk dude that just pulled a knife on a guy is now grabbing you. To me, you're being attacked. You say to them, I don't want to do this with you. They grab you. What are you supposed to do? So I'm pretty sure I threw him with Osoto, or something. I did a throw, right? I'm like, no, boom. And as we hit the ground, he kind of twists. And as is the case with many judo throws, the velocity of the descent, sometimes the thrower ends up on the bottom. You know what I mean? Especially with Osoto, because you hit the turn and, But this isn't a judo tournament. This is a fight with a 60-year-old man, a drunk 60-year-old man, on his birthday in front of all of his friends and family. So I throw him with Osoto. I think it was Osoto. We hit the ground. He rolls me. I'm on the bottom now. He's in my guard. And people are going crazy. They are shouting, get him, sensei, get him! What the hell am I supposed to do? So now, like I said, I've been doing groundwork by that time for 4 or 5 years. Not every day, but, a couple times a week with my friends and stuff. And so I was no slouch, even though I was wearing a white belt, I was pretty okay for a white belt, And the place I was training, which wasn't this place, I was training at another club, I was submitting, not everybody, but almost everybody, And not all the time, but, enough that they called me Jiu-Jitsu Jeff. So anyway, so I put this old drunk guy in an arm lock from my guard. I put him in an arm lock, but he's like, I don't think so. And because, he's no slouch on the ground either. He's been doing judo for 40 years or more, right? Probably 50, I don't know. He pulls his arm out. But when he pulled his arm out, his other arm stayed in. And so I put him in omoplata, which, if you know, is kind of a shoulder lock. You do it with your legs, whatever, And a hush has fallen over the crowd. They're watching. Nobody's interfering. They're just watching this happen. This is a duel or whatever you want to call it, So anyway, I put this judo guy in omoplata, and then I sit up, and I've never done this to anyone else, but to him, I had not just an omoplata, but also I sit up and I also put on a clock choke, which is it gives you an idea of how far up his shoulder was being bent that I could put my belly on the back of his head. I was doing both an omoplata and a clock choke, Really, in retrospect, it's amazing I didn't break that dude's shoulder, Whatever. And then, he's, that's not you don't get out of that, So the dude taps, and I remember he kind of screamed too. He's let out this really horrifying scream, which I guess maybe was his shoulder being wrenched, and he tapped. And then I stood up, and as I recall, I kind of told him off as he laid there on the ground. I was like, dude, you're attacking people with knives. I told you I didn't want to be your demonstration buddy, but you attacked me. What the hell's wrong with you? And then I was talking, I was like, what the hell is wrong with all of you? This guy's insane, And you would think at that point that would be the end of the class, so to speak. But and I have no idea how this occurred. I don't really remember how, but class happened after that. People trained and pretty sure the guy showed some technique and class happened, Pretty sure I had cake later. Anyway, and then after, the class, if you want to call it that, we're all walking back to our cars. Me and my big friend that looked like Tank Abbott were walking back to his big mouse-infested electro horn car. And I'm saying to the guy, why did you pull a knife on that guy? Why did you pull a knife on Jared? And then the guy says to me, knife fighting? We used to knife fight down at the train tracks. Like, that's what he said. As if I was talking about something that hadn't happened earlier that evening. Like, I was just like, hey, do you like knife fighting? That wasn't even what I was asking. I was like, why did you pull a knife on homie? And like, homie. What am I, one of the Diaz brothers? But anyway, he says to me, oh, we used to knife fight down at the train tracks. And I'm thinking, this guy's crazy, Anyway. And that's not even the end of the story. So some months later, I'm competing at a judo tournament. And this guy's one of the referees. And I go over to him and I'm like, dude. And then he's like, oh, he recognizes me. And now he's not drunk. And he apologizes. He's like, man, I am so sorry for what happened. I should not have done what I did. And I assume with that, he means like the knife thing and grabbing me and whatever. But he's very apologetic. He says, I am so sorry for what occurred. Please accept, my whatever apology. But still, I was never welcome back at that club again. They said I had, how did they phrase it? I think they said I had offended the Mets. What's the moral of that story? Honestly, I don't know. But it's a pretty good story, though.